Karen's smug grin could have lit the forest on fire, but the veteran's icy stare promised a reckoning she'd never forget. She thought she'd scored a free tent until the sheriff stepped out of the shadows, badge glinting like a guillotine. Karen was the queen of her cul-de-sac, a self-proclaimed arbiter of neighborhood justice. Her days were spent policing mailboxes for improper flyers and lecturing kids on skateboards. But her latest crusade wasn't about HOA rules, it was personal. She'd spotted a faded green tent pitched in the woods behind her pristine suburban enclave, a blemish on her vision of order. To Karen, that tent screamed vagrancy, chaos, a threat to her curated world. She didn't know it belonged to Tom, a grizzled army veteran who'd traded city life for the quiet of the pines, or that he shared his campfire with Sheriff Dan, his old platoon buddy. Tom had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, carrying scars both visible and buried. The woods were his sanctuary, where the rustle of leaves drowned out nightmares and the stars reminded him of freedom. His tent, a battered relic from his service days, was more home than any house could be. He'd camp out for weeks, fishing with Dan, the county sheriff, who traded combat boots for a badge but still craved the simplicity of a campfire. Their bond was forged in blood and trust, a brotherhood Karen couldn't fathom when she decided to clean up the forest. It started with a rant on the neighborhood app, "Some hobos squatting in our woods." Karen posted, her words dripping with righteous fury. "I'm handling it." Her followers, mostly other Karens, egged her on with clapping emojis. Armed with indignation and a pair of gardening gloves, Karen marched into the pines at dawn. The tent sat alone, unguarded, its canvas flapping gently. She didn't hesitate. With a crowbar from her garage, she pried the stakes loose, tore the tent down, and dragged it to her SUV. "No one disrespects my community," she muttered, tossing Tom's sleeping bag into a ditch for good measure. She drove home, tent crammed in her trunk, already crafting her victory post, problem solved. Tom returned that evening, his boots crunching on pine needles. The clearing was empty, his tent gone, his gear scattered like shrapnel. His heart sank not for the loss of a $50 tent, but for the violation of his peace. He knelt, fingers tracing the dirt where his stakes had been. "Who does this?" he growled, his voice low but shaking. He called Dan, who was off duty but always a phone call away. "Someone hit my camp, man. Took everything." Dan's response was immediate, "I'm coming. Stay put." By nightfall, Dan's patrol truck rolled into the clearing, headlights cutting through the fog. Tom stood waiting, his silhouette rigid against the trees. Dan stepped out, his face a mix of concern and barely contained rage. "You see anyone poking around?" he asked, scanning the scene. Tom shook his head. "Just tracks. Sneaker prints. Small." Dan's eyes narrowed. He knew the type, someone bold enough to steal but dumb enough to leave evidence. "Let's take a walk," he said, grabbing his flashlight. The trail led them to the edge of the subdivision, where Karen's McMansion loomed, its porch lights blazing like a fortress. In her driveway sat the tent, crumpled but unmistakable, leaning against her SUV. Tom's jaw tightened. "That's mine," he said, voice flat but lethal. Dan's hand rested on his holster, not for show but from instinct. "Stay here," he told Tom, striding toward the door. He knocked, the sound sharp in the quiet night. Karen answered, her smile smug until she saw the badge. "Evening, ma'am," Dan said, his tone colder than the November air. "Care to explain why you've got my friend's tent in your driveway?" Karen's face cycled through shock, defiance, then outrage. "That tent was an eyesore," she snapped, crossing her arms. It's public land, and I have every right to clean it up. You should thank me. Dan didn't flinch. Public land doesn't mean your land, ma'am. That's theft. Felony theft, actually, since you crossed county lines. Karen's bravado faltered, but she doubled down. He's a drifter. Probably dangerous. I was protecting the neighborhood. Tom, who'd ignored Dan's order and now stood behind him, spoke up. I'm a veteran, lady. That tent was my home. You think you're the hero here? The confrontation escalated as Karen's voice rose, shrill and unyielding. I know my rights. You can't intimidate me. She jabbed a finger at Dan, who remained stone-faced. Neighbors began to gather, drawn by the commotion, their phones already recording. Tom's eyes burned with a quiet fury, his words cutting through Karen's tirade. You didn't just steal my stuff. You stole my peace. You think you're above everyone, don't you? Karen scoffed, but her confidence wavered as Dan pulled out his notepad. You've got two choices, he said. Return the tent and everything else, or I cuff you now and we sort it out at the station. Karen's defiance cracked. She stammered, eyes darting to the growing crowd. This is outrageous. I'm a taxpayer. But the neighbors' whispers weren't on her side. Someone muttered, she's always like this. Another said, poor guy, that's his home. Karen, sensing the tide turning, tried to pivot. Fine, take it back. I was just trying to help. She gestured to the tent, but Tom wasn't appeased. You don't get to play victim, he said. You tore down my life because it didn't fit your aesthetic. Dan retrieved the tent and Tom's scattered gear, cataloging every item with methodical precision. Karen watched, humiliated, as her neighbors filmed her downfall. But the real blow came when Tom spoke again, his voice steady but heavy. I fought for this country. I earned my peace. You took that because you thought you're better than me. Karen had no response, her face pale under the porch light. Dan handed Tom his tent, clapping him on the shoulder. Let's go set this back up, he said. They walked away, leaving Karen to face the crowd alone. Back at the clearing, Tom and Dan worked in silence, repitching the tent under the stars. The forest felt different now, tainted, but still home. Tom didn't speak of justice or revenge, he just wanted his sanctuary back. Dan, ever the protector, stayed until dawn, ensuring no one else would disturb his friend. Karen, meanwhile, faced a different reckoning. Her neighborhood app exploded with posts calling her out, her reputation shredded. She'd always seen herself as the gatekeeper of order, but now she was the outcast. The next day, Tom sat by his campfire, the tent standing proud again. He didn't feel victorious, just tired. Karen's actions weren't just theft, they were an assault on his dignity, a reminder that some battles follow you home. Dan stopped by with coffee, his presence a quiet promise, no one would mess with Tom again. But the damage lingered, a crack in the peace Tom had fought so hard to find. Karen never apologized. She doubled down on her app, claiming she was misunderstood, but the comments tore her apart. The neighborhood saw her for what she was, a bully cloaked in self-righteousness. Tom didn't care about her punishment, he just wanted to be left alone. Yet the story spread, a cautionary tale of hubris and humanity clashing in the woods. Was Karen's crusade worth the cost, or was she just a product of a community that rewards outrage? Share your thoughts on where justice lies in this tangled mess of pride and principle.